This Native American versus African American, American Indian versus African American debate is a product of what you call epistemic oppression. Stay with me. I don't talk about stuff like this on social media. This is not my niche, but I really want to just touch on this real quick. Our people, Black or African American, are experiencing this form of epistemic injustice where whatever we say, we're not believed or we are dismissed because it contradicts the whitewashed historical narrative. What we learned in those Tim McGraw history books in elementary school and middle school and high school, and the pictures that we have seen from adolescents all the way up to grown adults led to this very moment. When it came time for us to reclaim our power, we would have no credibility. For 12 years in those textbooks, we learned what Africans look like, white people, and Indians.
Might have to drop a dime on them niggas.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying?
You gotta stop it.
I don't like that shit.
For sure, bro.
I don't like that shit.
And I say all the time on my channel that America was the first civilization, and they're trying to, it's a way to hijack our land from it. It's a reason why it's an African, back to Africa theory that they pushing so hard on us. And it's to hide this land, and I'm glad we got more people speaking out on this, and it makes perfect sense. Check it out.
So this history, these narratives are so deeply ingrained in all of us of all nationalities because we've been, like I said, we've been learning this from what grade to what grade. These lies, because they are lies, I hope we're here. The lies were made true, so much so that our genuine history seems unbelievable or silly. So what does that mean for us? That means that we have no credibility when we speak our genuine historical truth. That is what you call marginalization and silencing. Silence the Black voice and their testimony loses credibility. And this is why our truth will always be questioned, dismissed.
And that's why we see so many people coming in FBA. As you see, they're just trying to disregard the whole FBA because they understand that it's a movement that goes against the system. And this is how the system stays operating through these agenda, these little narratives that they make sure to keep strong. And if anybody is coming at them, the attacks was crazy. Exactly what she's saying is what we're going through right now.
Or made to sound irrational because this is a form of racial gaslighting. And sometimes it can make people of color question their own knowledge because it's colliding with this powerful false narrative. And this is why you have people who look like they're African American or Black and get on TikTok and say, I just found out I'm Native American, and everybody is flooding their comments. The Native Americans are flooding their comments like, are you dumb? The white people are flooding their comments like, oh my gosh, you guys hate yourselves. Other Black people are flooding the comments, oh my gosh, you hate yourself. And I do this at African American and Black because understand that people of color were reclassified over and over and over and over again. And so were Native Americans and American Indians. They were reclassified as well. And if you don't know what reclassification is, then just let that be your homework. Let's also not forget the fact that the term African American and Black was never a thing at a certain point in time. So before that, what were we? We just all came from Africa, right? And the last thing I'll speak of in the comments that when people of color come online and say that they're Native American and they're so excited, and then we have the official Native Americans that come in the comments, a lot of the opinions are based on the person's proximity to whiteness. And what I mean by that is that people who get on here and say, hey, I just learned I'm Native American, if they don't have a certain hair texture or skin color, you guys are automatically saying, no, you're not. Or they'll say, well, you're not full-blown American Indian. Your other parent's probably African. And it's just really funny to me because when a white person gets on here and says, hey, I just learned I'm Native American, nobody is saying anything about them being mixed with European. Is it because they look more like you? Look more like you? Nope, that look is just the proximity to whiteness that you're comfortable with. My people of color, I encourage you guys to continue to dive into your lineage. If your great grandma and grandparents have told you time and time again that you are American Indian, that our people were already here, they're not lying. They have no reason to lie. That is your truth. Let's reclaim our time. reclaim our power. We don't need the approval from anybody. They want you to think that we need their approval. We don't need their approval. It's okay. This
Yeah, and we don't need their approval. So our grandmas told us what we were, and they're not finna lie to us. But that messes up the narrative of this system, especially with the Democratic Party and politics. So you see with immigration and all of that, it doesn't go well. But I'm glad a lot of us is waking up. It looks like it's gonna be another movement that we're gonna have to push to tell the truth. Okay? America was here first. America was the first civilization. And then came everything else.
TikTok is only for entertainment purposes and educational purposes only. Do your own research and use your own discernment. Anything you take from this video is at your own risk. With that being said, so I'm on slavevoyages.org, right? Just doing some more research type shit. And have y'all actually looked at the records? No, like actually looked, because I decided to go deep, right? Because I wanted to know exactly how many enslaved Africans they brought directly from Africa into the Americas. Look what this shit says. All right, so boom, this is the slavevoyages.org website, right? So I filtered the place of vessel departure because I want to know exactly how many enslaved Africans, once again, was being imported from other ports outside of America into the Americas. So these are all the ports outside of America where they was capturing these slaves, right? And then I filtered the place where the vessel voyages ended. So this is where they ended up at after coming from outside of America from those different ports that I showed you last time. So I filtered to mainland North America and Spanish mainland America, which is the Americas, right? So according to slavevoyages.org, from the years 1700 all the way up to the 1800s, they didn't even have documentation from before that. They only recorded about 7,005 enslaved people coming from outside of the Americas into the Americas. And if you look at the summary, the stats, right? Once again, captives embarked from outside of the Americas was total captives were 7,005 enslaved people, right? Captives disembarked when they got to the Americas was actually 6,091, so it's actually less than that. Now, mind you, from the 1700s all the way up to the 1800s, they only recorded about 29 voyages being made. Mind you, again, these were coming from all the ports outside of America into the Americas, right? So just keep following you. So I decided to take a step further, right? Because I want to see how many African enslaved people was coming just directly from the African ports, not other ports, but just the African ports. It is worse than I even thought. All right, so once again, I filtered the place of vessel departure, once again, just to reflect the African ports. And I filtered the place where the vessel voyage ended just to the Americas, and I've included South America as well. And look what this shit says. Captives embarked, meaning coming outside of the Americas, 414. Captives disembarked, coming into the Americas, only 408 enslaved people was recorded coming into the Americas, just from Africa, from the African imports. And if you look at the table, let's look at the table. And they only recorded one trip, guys, from 1803. That's it. They only recorded one trip coming into the Americas of the African slaves only come from the African imports. One freaking trip. Oh, but wait, let me show you something even more eye-opening. If you look at the intra-American slave trade, which is the domestic slave trade, it says captives embarked 742,000, captives disembarked about 700,000, and they made about 37,000 voyages within the Americas from different ports within the Americas. Pay attention. So from the 1500 all the way down to the 1800, and once again, this is for the intra-American slave trade, guys, the domestic slave trade, it only recorded 109 Africans being moved within the Americas. But when you look at Brazil, they recorded 196,000. The Caribbean, they recorded 213,000. Mainland North America, they recorded 137,000. Spanish mainland America, they recorded 180,000. And a total of 742,000 enslaved people being moved and traded within the Americas. These ships weren't arriving from Africa. The only ships that were arriving from Africa was in this column, and they only recorded 109 captives coming from Africa. The rest were already in America. Yeah, so the vast majority of these enslaved people were Black indigenous. They were born here, not imported, were prisoners of war, and were being reclassified in census records and legal documents and being traded via the intra-American slave trade, not the transatlantic routes. Because if only about 7,000 captives were being recorded coming into the Americas over the course of a century, and only about 109 captives were being recorded coming directly from African ports, then where are the 12.5 million Africans they said that they brought?
See, the numbers is not adding up. And this is why this is the time where information just getting out, and we able to see exactly the tricks that they was pulling on us about this land. But what a time to be alive.
Over here. And this is not a conspiracy, guys. This is coming directly from the slavewages.org website, from their own data. Yeah, they didn't import millions. You know what they did? They recycled, renamed, and reclassified the Black indigenous population that was already here, took those same numbers to build up an illusion of a mass African importation for their website. Because history tells us there was 37,000 voyages being made via the transatlantic slave trade, right? But when you actually look at the data and go into the records, those 37,000 voyages were actually made via the domestic slave trade. You see how if you don't pay attention, they'll fool you? From slavevoyages.org, it says, this database compiles information about more than 36,000 voyages that forcibly transported enslaved Africans across the Atlantic between 1514 and 1866. But when you actually go into the records, those 37,000 voyages was coming from the intra-American slave trade, other known as the domestic slave trade. And the only trip being made from the transatlantic slave trades was from 1803. 1803. The rest came from the inter-American slave trade, starting from the 1500s all the way down to the 1800s, guys. Once again, according to Google, an estimate suggests over 36,000 voyages transported enslaved Africans across the Atlantic between the 16th and 19th centuries, with the Slave Voyages Database, a key resource documented around 36,000 voyages. What a joke. All right, so let's do some basic math here. If only about 7,000 Africans were imported over the course of 100 years, there is no way that our so-called African ancestors that they said that we are descendants from birthed the 40 million so-called Black Americans from the 1800s up until today. And before y'all get up here and say that they didn't record everything from the transatlantic slave trade, that excuse falls apart the moment you realize that these voyages were insurance-backed, tax audited, and backed by whole nations and banks. And if they forgot to record millions, then they would have forgotten to collect the money, right? And if those were actually true African arrivals, then why does the transatlantic side only show 29 voyages being made over the course of 100 years, but the intra-American, the domestic slave trade show about 37,000 voyages being made within the Americas? Why is there no physical, numeric, or archival evidence of a mass African importation, but there's overwhelming evidence of a system of internal indigenous enslavement within the Americas between the 1600s and the 1800s being disguised as African ancestry? That's not an African import story. That's a mass internal trade of indigenous people being reclassified to African after the fact. As a matter of fact, somebody put me to a different database where I can look into because they're playing nothing.
Back. So y'all see, that's how this
TikTok is only for entertainment purposes.
So this is exactly what's going on, and it's been going on, rewriting history. We know that we come from this land and we got to protect, our lineage and expose this so this becomes normal, because a lot of people don't know that America has the facts of being the first inhabited land. So it's like we just need to get this mainstream, and it opens up people's eyes about who is here on this land first. But salute to the Choctaw, the Cherokee, Blackfoots, Solani, everybody, the indigenous, the foundational Black Americans. Salute to us, man. We can't be stopped, man. We're just exposing a lot right now. So the delineation is working, and the cancellation, make sure y'all join my Discord. If you leave some comments, I'm gonna throw you in there. Make sure you leave a comment and I can pick y'all in there. But on my lives, I kind of go in there with giving out the Discord. But it's where we go over information, man. If you're interested, you gotta tap in, where we try to come up with some strategies to build us. So man, I appreciate y'all. I will catch y'all in the next video. Peace and love.
Have a community, you must have three things to have a community in it. You must have a wholly independent economic structure that can provide goods, service, products, and things for your own people, and jobs and tax bases for your own people. You should at least control four basic things. You should be trying to control water, food, medicine, and energy to be able to survive and compete.
Here we got Mr. Pollock. He had a cornfield. He took advantage of a free water test from us, and this is what we found in this water. We found sulfur, we found hardness, and we solved these problems with an easy fix of 2 tanks. So get your free water test today. Stay blessed. Click the link below.